Whether you're paying for chores, it's up to you. Not paying for chores because everyone needs to contribute. You're paying them for bigger jobs that may need to be done, or maybe you would hire someone else for, but you decide you're going to pay your kids. These are some life lessons that you can learn, but not just give them the money, but also give them principle. I know the kids are like, but it's my money. But if you start at a very young age that this is what we do because this is what we do, we give, we spend, we save. We give, we spend, we save. That'll just be ingrained with them from a very young age that hopefully will mitigate any challenges in the future. Welcome to Real Talk with the Parenting Blueprint Coaches, where we discuss all aspects of parenting using the foundation of understanding personality dynamics to raise independent, responsible, and resilient children. My name is Karen Wagner, founder of Teaching Our Youth and the Parenting Blueprint. Let's dig right in with today's topic and have some real talk with the Parenting Blueprint coaches. Allowance or no allowance? Do you pay your kids to do chores? Do you give them allowance to just learn money management? To give an allowance or not give an allowance? This debate continues. My name is Karen Wagner. I'm the founder of the Parenting Blueprint, and I am here with another Parenting Blueprint coach, Roseanne Delaney. And today we're going to dig a little deep into whether or not we give kids allowances, how we give our kids allowances, or not. So welcome to today's podcast as we dig into allowance or no allowance as the debate continues. So Roseanne, there's a lot of debate around this. And as a coach, I've had a lot of parents who feel as though they're always giving their kids money. Okay. They're giving their kids money for this and that. And they feel like, they just, the kids just think that money appears. You just go to the bank and you take it out and they get money all the time, and not understanding the value of money. And then there are parents who feel as though their kids have to earn money. So allowance has been a big debate all around. And so I'm kind of curious with your philosophy and your thoughts on allowance. And let's kind of look at a couple different viewpoints on how our kids, learn to do chores with money, without money, manage money. So what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I have a lot of thoughts, but I guess the way we handled it as parents, which looking back in hindsight, which we always do, and we have that 2020 vision on the backside, we didn't do it probably the way I would do it now.
Okay.
But when our kids were at home, we did not give an allowance. They did chores because they lived in our home, and it takes the whole family to keep the household running. Now, when it came to any extra money or any needs or wants that they might have, then as long as they were like doing their chores and getting good grades and, just being really good citizens, then we would pay for those things. And so it was our money. Now, in hindsight, here comes the 2020 from the way that we did things as to how I would maybe do it. If we were to start over, I think it's good for kids to learn that being part of a community, there are just things you do. And your family is a community, and there are just things that have to be done by everyone in the household to make it run smoothly. And there are extra things that need to be done where quite possibly we could have paid them to do them and begin to teach them money management. We missed that boat. We missed that boat. And we missed a bunch of life lessons that could have been very easily taught by jumping in that boat. Like money management, also taking the opportunity to seek out the best prices or watch for sales or coupon clip or, or maybe just decide, maybe I really don't need that right now. Right? And because we didn't take that opportunity, thank goodness our children thus far as adults have done well with their money management. However, they can be impulsive buyers, and that could have been something that we taught better by allowing some opportunity for them to earn money to get things themselves. it really is a learning curve, right? As being parents. But there are other things out there. I had friends who, with their allowance, just for doing the things, I have no idea if they earned extra money for bigger jobs, but they did get an allowance. But they had to buy their own school clothes and their school supplies, and pay for if they wanted to go to the movies or with friends or whatever. And that's how they did it in their house. And that is another way to handle allowance. And some of them had chores to get their allowance, and some of them just had an allowance just to have an allowance.
Right.
So many different ways.
There are. And that's where the debate continues. And so I am probably from that same background as you are, that my kids had chores or contributions because that's how we make the house work, right? I would always say I'm the mom, not the maid, I mean? So everybody, and even from a young age, even if it was emptying the waste baskets from the bathroom into the big trash can when they were little, even if it was putting silverware away, from the dishwasher, they all had a little something to do that contributed. And so when we are doing this from a younger age, when they get to be teenagers and we get really resentful because they're not doing anything, if they were already doing stuff in the beginning, this is just how it's done here. We're not introducing anything new. So that's the first thing that comes to chores. We did not pay for chores. But as our kids got older, we did give them an allowance. And this was probably something that we learned at our church from money management, right? From being fiscally responsible and helping them at a younger age to have a certain amount of money in which they would give or donate to whatever charity that would choose to do, whether it was the church, whether it was to the to anything have to do with animals or the Humane Society, whatever they want to do, that they would give. And then we had long-term savings, which they would put 10% long-term savings, 10% to give, and then they lived on the rest. So we were trying to teach them those principles from the beginning. And so their allowances would range based on their age. And then they had an opportunity to maybe buy certain things that they would want. I mean, certainly we were providing the needs that they had, that they would need. But if there was anything extra from that, that's where the allowance came in. If they wanted a particular video game, but it wasn't Christmas or birthday, like we just didn't buy all the video games just because they were out, that they would then have their allowance that they have saved. So either it was a long term or maybe they had a little bit of their pocket money that they would do. And I know Kyle was always clipping those coupons for Toys R Us, which I don't even know if Toys R Us is around anymore, to get the best deal, or go to GameStop and turn some of his games in and use some of his money to buy the next one. But it was teaching them how to manage that money at a younger age. Now, if they did big chores, like if there was a big thing to do, like, cleaning and sweeping out the garage, or, doing some painting around the house, we would pay them for that because I would possibly pay somebody else to do that, right? So when it came to those things, we did pay them. And the other thing that came in handy when my kids were older is, when you have your school budget for clothes, like we, have to outfit our kids every year for school, and I have to buy X amount, of clothes for the year with this budget. And if they wanted certain things that were branded and were going to cost more, then they could put the difference in, and we could shop together, but this is what mom was going to spend and what you had. But then I found that when it was their money, they were much wiser shoppers with their money than they were with my money. I found that my son Eric was very good at finding the deals and putting things together to get X amount of pants and shirts, and he had to have the hats that match the shoes. I mean, he liked to dress nice when he was in school, right? And so, but that taught them the value of the dollar. And so every family may approach it from a different perspective, whether we're just giving them money. They can earn, like some parents will pay their kids for grades. I mean, you can choose to pay your kids for grades if that's something you want to do. We just kind of expected that. But, it's kind of like when another philosophy is you work a job and you do it well and you get a raise. Right. So, so maybe that's the perspective for philosophy you have, to paying your kids to get good grades, and then they can do things. The other thing that parents do is maybe they are tying it to the chores. I found that your approach, that everybody contributes, because see, if the kids don't do the chores, they don't get paid. I still need the chore done. You may not feel like you need the money, but I still need that bathroom cleaned, so that was not something that I wanted to have to enforce around the money piece of that. Another approach that I've seen families do. And I think this was a love and logic that if the child didn't want to do a chore, that they could pay another child to do a chore with their allowance or whatever, So there are ways we could do that, but it's just finding what works best for you. And I think when you're reflecting back on your early years of parenting and the things that I have learned and what is happening in our world, these are soft skills, life skills that we're teaching our kids about money management that we can do through an allowance. And I know when my kids were little and they got $1.50 like that. So of course my kids are in their 30s now. So that was like a lot of money to them when they were little, but that they needed to have a little box of the money that they would give, a box that they would have for long-term savings. And then we had eventually opened them an interest-bearing account and teaching them what that was all about. When they got their first job, we took them to a bank, we opened an account. We even got them, do I say, a credit card that would maybe have a $200, that's only $200, that as they got older, they could put gas in their car and pay it off to build their credit. But we did this together as a family to teach them those financial principles. And it did start with an allowance when they were younger to manage their money. So it's just finding what works best for your family values and the way you want to approach finances. Some of us may look back on the fact that no one really taught me and I made some mistakes and I don't want my kids to make those same mistakes. I grew up from a generation that was the envelope system, like we just, we went to the bank, we cashed our checks and everything went into the envelopes, and the envelopes were the bills that got mailed out. I'm probably dating myself, but it's really what works best for your family. And so, Roseanne, based on what you had learned in the past, what would you do differently now that maybe you didn't do in the past?
Yeah, there's a lot I would do differently. I would still not pay for doing basic household chores.
Right.
I still firmly believe that teaching that it takes a community to make things run smoothly is an important skill. But now looking back, I can see the value in giving an allowance of money for extra things that they do and letting them learn how to discern how to spend that money. And sometimes maybe they run out of money before they have more money and they can't do anything. And that's a wonderful life lesson that's a natural consequence that can be learned. And also, now that I see my kids are in their 30s too, 20s and 30s, and they're all very, very stingy with their money. And I'm grateful because it could have very well gone the other way. But they are savvy shoppers. They're looking for the deals. They don't mind waiting because they know that there isn't just one Black Friday. There's Black Friday like every month of the year. And so they're very savvy that way, but it's because it's their money, not my money. And I could have taught them that sooner than them discovering that, after they are out and earning their own money and on their own. So, I think we did a little bit that I feel is good, but we could have done so much more. And I think the awesome thing about the podcasts being available now and other ways of getting more information. When I was a young mom, I had to rely on what my parents did as my reference and what I could read in a book, in a parenting book or in a financial book. And I didn't always have time to read because I had 4 little kids. So sometimes I just didn't read the books. And sometimes I only read the back of the book because that's all I had time to read. And so now there's so many more resources that how lucky are you listeners that there's a podcast you can listen while you're driving to work or to the grocery store or just tooting around your house doing chores to help open your mind and raise your awareness to, there are lots of ways that we can look at this. And how will this work best for our family?
Yes. It is about, getting together with your family values and at what point you want to start that. And we did start at a younger age with those principles that I shared with you. But I will tell you that there are going to be some life lessons. I remember taking our kids to, I don't know, some type of fair, and they wanted to buy this dinky toy that we knew was not going to last 30 minutes. Okay. They're selling these toys, and I just knew now it was their money, it was their allowance. But when they purchased this and realized that it didn't last, I had to be sad. I had to say, are you sure you want that? It may not last. I tried to give them that, and that's what they chose to do. That's what they did. And then they learned it wasn't a good use of my money. But I'd rather them do that now than when they got older and bought this car that was just, may have looked good, but had 300,000 miles on it. And it wasn't going to be a good value for them, to learn that maybe I need to weigh out what is going to be the best investment with the money that I've worked hard for or I've saved a long time for. And there were a couple of those situations where I didn't say, I told you so. I had to be sad and not mad, because that's how they learn. That's how we all learn. So when it comes to allowance or no allowance, there's a lot of different ways that you can go, but what is going to be best for you and your family? What are the values that you hold dear? What are the life lessons that you want to teach your children that they may not learn in school? I think they are now starting to teach more finances in high school than they did when we were in school. And for a period of time, it wasn't something to teach kids. And about credit, the thing with credit, I think a lot of kids get into college and they get all these credit cards, and then they blow their credit because they're not realizing that you have to pay that back, And so I'd rather have my kids had a credit card at the age of 16 attached to their checking account that was only $200, so they couldn't get in too much trouble with it. But they learned and they built some credit so that when they did need to do something, they had a decent credit score. So a lot of things to think about, families, that you can process and get with your partner if you're parenting with someone else, or even if you're parenting alone. Map out what are the values that I want to do and put together a structure. And if you have a friend that you want to bounce it off to, or throw something in the Parent by Design with Karen Wagner group, and we can dialogue it again there. But I think there's some great lessons that can be learned when we are applying an allowance. Whether you're paying for chores, it's up to you. Not paying for chores because everyone needs to contribute. You're paying them for bigger jobs that may need to be done, or maybe you would hire someone else for, but you decide you're going to pay your kids. These are some life lessons that you can learn, but not just give them the money, but also give them principle. I know the kids are like, but it's my money. But if you start at a very young age that this is what we do because this is what we do, we give, we spend, we save. We give, we spend, we save. That'll just be ingrained with them from a very young age. That hopefully will mitigate any challenges in the future. So I hope you enjoyed this episode of Real Talk with the Parenting Blueprint Coaches. Don't forget to click the subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. We look forward to seeing you on the next one. Roseanne, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.